Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, teaming up with SG1 Sports here to bring you SEC football and get you set for the 2019 season. We got 5 reasons here why Texas A&M will pull off an upset against either mighty Alabama or Clemson, the top 2 teams in the country. All right, reason number 1 is that Jimbo Fisher is in play at Texas A&M, and he is up the ante, and he has taken charge of this program. And he's used to big games. He's won conference championships, big bowl games, finished in the top 10 several times, and of course, won a national championship at Florida State in 2013. There was a time in which Clemson could not break through against Florida State. Jimbo Fisher had that team and that program rolling. And even when Clemson took over the ACC, check out the games and the scores, but most certainly the gameplay, Florida State still competed with Clemson, national championship Clemson teams in 2015 and 16, teams that went to the final 2. Even though Florida State dropped off, they still competed with those Clemson teams down to the wire. And then, of course, what happened last year? Clemson came into Kyle Field. Jimbo Fisher devised a game plan, and his team played lights out in the second half, almost pulled off the upset, had the fumble late in the game after an 85-yard drive, had the failed 2-point conversion at the gun, or they would have pulled off the upset possibly in overtime, 28-26. So Jimbo Fisher's been there. He's going to prepare his team. He knows how to prepare teams for big games. So reason number 1 why Texas A&M will pull off an upset against either Bama or Clemson is Jimbo Fisher. Reason number 2 why the Aggies will beat either the Tide or the Tigers, they've got no fear. They play Alabama every year. They know what Alabama is. It's a common opponent. There are no surprises. They get their brains beat in on occasion against Alabama, but certainly there are no surprises. And even though the final score was ugly, 45-23 in Tuscaloosa last year, consider Alabama was the most dominant team in college football during the regular season last year. Nobody came close. They shut out Mississippi State 24-0, LSU 29-0. A top 10 LSU team at home was bludgeoned. Texas A&M played the most competitive game against Alabama last year. They were within 1 score, 21-13 late in the second quarter. That's the closest anyone came to the Tide in the regular season last year, Texas A&M. And then, of course, the Clemson game at Kyle Field. Clemson was a 17-point favorite in that game, and Texas A&M outgained them by over 200 yards in the second half to almost pull off the upset. So it's reason number 2 why Texas A&M will pull off an upset against either Clemson or Alabama. They have no fear. Reason number 3 that the Aggies will pull off the upset against either Bama or Clemson is they've got no fear because they know their opponent. They have knowledge of their opponent. Yes, Jimbo Fisher has seen Clemson over and over and over and over. It's interesting that he moves from Texas A&M from Florida State to Texas A&M and right out of the gate faces Clemson twice. And, of course, Clemson was much of the reason for Jimbo Fisher's demise at Florida State, but Jimbo Fisher, again, beat Clemson year after year after year. Clemson teams that finished in the top 10 in 2012, 13, 14. And then when Clemson finally took over, they were still, Florida State, very competitive in those games. Jimbo Fisher knows Dabo Swinney, knows him inside and out, knows the program, knows what Clemson will bring. More than any other opponent outside the ACC, Jimbo Fisher knows what's going to happen when he takes his team to Clemson, South Carolina in September. Also with Alabama, of course, again, they play every year. And despite the final score, Texas A&M played pretty well in Tuscaloosa. Now consider they go to Kyle Field this time around, and Texas A&M, of course, is a much better team at home than they are on the road. And also consider that even though the Aggies have to go to Clemson this year, they would rather play that game again at Kyle Field. Clemson has either lost to or been outplayed by the likes of Pitt and Syracuse and North Carolina State, teams that have won national championships at Clemson in 2016 and 18 against pretty marginal opponents at home. So Texas A&M can do it. They've got more talent than those programs do. So reason number 3, the Texas A&M will pull off an upset against Bama or Clemson is that they know their opponent. Reason number 4, that the Aggies will pull off an upset against Bama or Clemson is Kellen Mond. Kellen Mond played like a maniac in the second half against Clemson. 430 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Consider that Texas A&M in the second half rally down 17-3 against Clemson, fighting back to get within that 2-point margin, scoring what could have been the touchdown, the fumble at the pylon with minutes left in the game, and then coming back to score and the failed 2-point conversion. They racked up 388 yards of total offense in the second half of that game against Clemson. That's 400 yards against that defense in one half. Kellen Mond, he's not as good as Trevor Lawrence. No way. He's not as good as Tua Tagovailoa. He doesn't have to be as good for the season. He's got to be as good or better on one night, and he's shown capable of doing that on occasion. 430 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks against Clemson. And certainly Nick Saban knows what it's like to face a hot, streaky, dual-threat quarterback at Kyle Field, Johnny Manziel. Reason number 4 why Texas A&M will pull off an upset this year against either Bama or Clemson, Kellen Mond. Finally, reason number 5 why Texas A&M can face Alabama and Clemson and walk away a winner are those freakishly athletic wide receivers at Texas A&M. Kendrick Rogers had a monster game against Clemson last year, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also, you've got Jamon Osborne, Cameron Buckley. Texas A&M's wide receivers are really, really good. When you look at the complete roster, Alabama's got the top talent in college football. Just looking at recruiting rankings, it's not debatable. They've had the number 1 class every year but one for the last 7 or 8 years. Clemson has near the top talent in the nation and obviously the best team in the nation last year. Texas A&M brings to this game against both of these opponents top 15 talent. And on the right night, with the right scheme, with the right approach, with the right attitude and poise and execution, top 15 talent can beat top 2 or 3 talent. It happens all the time. Reason number 5 why Texas A&M can beat Alabama or Clemson and will one of these 2 opponents this year in 2019. They've got the athletes, especially a wide receiver, against suspect secondary play. All right. Our 5 reasons why Texas A&M will pull off an upset against Bama or Clemson. Would love to hear what you have to say. Keep it locked in right here at SG1 Sports SEC.